Hi, so today on Painted Haint, we're going to talk about El Caleuche and some other nautical, ocean related stories, or more so ship related stories. And I'm going to attempt a makeup look with this new, what is this? Have y'all seen this pigment paint? I don't know if you can see it up close, but it's pigment paint by Profusion. And so I was going to do a blue look, and honestly, y'all are probably going to see a lot of blue looks on this video or on this channel, because for some reason I have a lot of blue eyeshadow. I feel like that's the first eyeshadow that everybody had, as a teenager or as a preteen. So anyways, let's get into the story. So the main story we're going to talk about today is El Caleuche. El Caleuche is actually from the Chiloé people of Chile, and it's a pretty wild story. It reminds me very much of Pirates of the Caribbean as far as like the Flying Dutchman, and I feel like the writers probably did look at El Caleuche, and you'll see in a minute what I mean by that. But let's get this going first, and then we'll talk about it. So, like I said, it's from the Chiloé people. What's interesting too is that I've heard a couple of people in Europe coming across this particular story. It's like they have their own version. Mostly from the French. So they, from what I understood, call it El Caleuche. So it's the same spelling, but of course different pronunciation. The story that I heard was that basically this man and his father were fishing, and they heard music playing off in the distance from where they were fishing. And at first they thought, wow, somebody is really throwing down on a yacht somewhere. But the vessel never came into view, nor could they see the vessel. And that's actually one of the things with El Caleuche is you will hear it before you see it, unless it's on a foggy night or a foggy day or night, I believe. So in this story, or in this account, these people, this man and his father, like I said, were fishing, and they never saw the ship or the vessel never came into view. And I think the father knew what it was, and so he was like, let's head back to shore. And there have been a couple of stories like that. And I think there were some from Chile in that same vein. And the reason they say that you need to get away from this particular vessel, El Caleuche, is because if you don't get away from it, you run the risk of becoming a part of the crew. And this is where I'm reminded of Pirates of the Caribbean and the Flying Dutchman, because that was the thing. Like Will's dad, he was part of the crew, part of the ship as well. So I just binged it, that's where I got this idea for this video, actually. But that's where where the similarities start. So you have these people, these eyewitness accounts of hearing but never seeing the particular vessel. And it's interesting because, first off, this is only one iteration or one version of this story, or of this legend. But what's interesting is that what can protect you are two types of trees. And I'm going to look, I think it's the Chilean cherry tree. If that's not the correct tree name, I will put what the correct tree name is. And that's another thing, when I was getting ready for this video, the connection with Pirates of the Caribbean and the Flying Dutchman. So if you recall, the only way that the captain, the Dutchman, he could only get on land every 10 years. And so what I'm seeing in connection with this is, if you get on land, get to a tree land, you are protected. And so I thought that was interesting. The other legend that I actually find interesting, now that I'm wearing my Harry Potter shirt, is that it is said to also be a vessel of sorcerers. And this is also interesting because this legend comes from the 60s. And from what I read and researched, it came from a time following this major earthquake in Chile. And they said that people started to, kind of create this legend that merchants were making a pact or a deal with the sorcerers on this boat. And that's how they were able to do well while everyone else was not doing well following this earthquake. And so they said that the sorcerers are said to go out to sea every 3 months to regain power. And the reason I referenced my shirt is because I was thinking about, the school remember the school Draco wanted to go to, like he was Billy Badass, the one where they were stepping. You can't tell me them boys Durmstrang. You can't tell me at Durmstrang them boys did not come up in Hogwarts in the Great Hall stepping. That's exactly what they were doing. And I immediately thought of them, remember they showed up to the school on a ship. And this is a wizard school. Wizards are also known as sorcerers. You see where I'm going. So that was another connection I made. And I just found that kind of funny and also interesting that this particular legend is so prevalent. And I mean, well, it's affected people in more ways than one. Pretty sure a couple of people have disappeared on account of this ship, But yeah, I found that like really, really cool. Like, that writers were able to take this legend and not necessarily make it their own, but make it to where it fits their story, but it's still reflecting its own, its own version. But it also has some qualities of like the sirens, the legend of the mermaid or the water creature that sings, and that the music is what lures people in. So I thought that was interesting too, that there's some like, it's like a whole bunch of like mythical creatures and all kinds of legends intertwined in that, and I really like that about this story. But yeah, so we're not even done. So that was Caleuche. Then to talk about is the Great Eastern. And I mean, great doesn't even cover what this ship. And you're gonna see this ship was massive. Oh my God, like it's ridiculous. I've never seen, I can't say I've never seen anything like it, but at that time, people were blown away by how large it was. People were blown away by how large this ship was. It had 4 masts. Not only that, it was run by a paddle wheel, which was actually very common at that time. And I think they described it as the Titanic of its time, and its time was 1850s. So no one had ever, like, you have to think about it. At that point, only tall ships were really plying the ocean, sailing the ocean like that. And so when they see this particular ship, they're like, what the French toast is this? Um, it was so massive that, of course, it's going to be expensive to build. Um, so you end up getting legends out of this, basically, because people are like, this ship's too big, something's not right, I don't like it. You know, people immediately get suspicious. They're like, I don't like it, I'm not doing it. Like, I think people were blown away by it and wanted to sail on this ship because it was supposed to be a huge landfall for the designer of this ship, because, like I said, it was ahead of its time. But unfortunately, things start to happen, and those things include, like, for example, there are many examples. At one point, a crewman gets thrown into, or falls rather, into the paddle wheel compartment of the ship as it's going. And I mean, I don't care what anybody says, that paddle wheel, as it's moving, you know there's no getting out of it. So this man ends up being crushed to death. At one point, they plowed right into a pier and took out, I believe that at that point it was 2 crew members, those 2 poor souls. Even crazier, at another pier, or no, rather on its maiden voyage, they were getting ready to set sail, and the mooring cable, so what, if you've ever been on a cruise ship, and I'll post a picture of a mooring cable, or a mooring line, is what attaches the ship to the dock, and it snapped back and into the crowd, and it wasn't great. Look, it was not, it weren't perfect, you know, it wasn't a good time. And so people began to question whether or not this ship is cursed, especially when the person who built the ship, who designed and had it built, or, you know, worked on its building, he dies of a heart attack right after finding out what had happened to the crewman. So he was, and I mean, to be honest, you could also say, like, this is 1850s. People didn't do health like we do. Hell, people still don't do health like health is really supposed to be done. So that's when people begin to say, this ship is cursed. And it's so bad that it was supposed to make regular voyages to India. But because it was so expensive to run, and it had so much other things going on with it, but mostly the fact that it cost a lot to you know, that's a lot of coal, steam power, all of that. They ended up not going that far. So what they did do is they went across between Europe and New York. They would make regular passages, taking immigrants and, you know, people from other countries to the States. Now, on these voyages, this is where ish gets real. So on these voyages, people began to report hearing the sound of like knocking. And let me see if I can, like, I'm sorry my camera shook, but I don't know if you could hear that, but it's like a constant knocking. Actually, that's not even close, because this is knocking on metal. It's a constant, really a banging noise, like somebody trying to get out. And people begin, including the captain, people will begin to suspect that something isn't right. And people begin to say that they think it's the men who were responsible for basically building the hull. So this ship had a double hull. And what I mean by that, now, once I put this on, I'll tell you what, like, I'll kind of show you with my hands what I mean by that. But What I mean by double hull is it's literally space or a hull, and then there's an inside kind of area. And it said that knocking were these men who had been trapped. And that's pretty much when all hell breaks loose. Now, I have read that they found out that it was something loose, and I'm like, what the hell could be loose? Oh, and by the way, the exact name of those men, like what, by their profession, they were called riveters. So it was said to be the riveters knocking on on the ship. I mean, on the hull. And that's when people were like, F this boat. I'm not doing it. We're just like, absolutely not. And this becomes such a prevalent legend. Like, people are just not with it. And I wouldn't be with it either. I mean, that's creepy. And I have heard, like, the sound of the ocean against the hull of a ship. When I was on a cruise once and we had rough waters, and our cabin was in an area where the hull was, I don't know, it was weird. But I can imagine how unnerving that must be for people. So that becomes a legend. And they supposedly, even worse, supposedly the men will be found, like their skeletons will be found inside this hull space, which confirms it. It confirms that there are bodies, that there were bodies in this ship. And I mean, think about it. People back then did not care. I mean, we've all seen Titanic. We all know. And then they were, probably second class citizens anyway to them. We all know what's up. I mean, it's awful. and where I got that story from actually is from Haunted History, which was this show that used to come on. I think it still does come on Travel Channel from time to time, especially during Halloween. The reenactments, I mean, they're corny, yeah, but there's this reenactment of this lady like running down this hallway, and they showed the portholes opening and closing. Listen, portholes are heavy, so they can be heavy opening and closing, with a regular live person. So I can, if you see that as a real person, I can only, like, that will blow my mind. So that was the Great Eastern. And the next story, the next ship we are going to talk about, and talk about, is the USS West Virginia. So this is terrifying, and this is real. Like, there's no like legend has it. No, this really happened. And even scarier, the powers that be who were in charge were not going to tell these people's families what had happened to them. So the USS West Virginia, I'm playing with this. I don't know what I'm doing. The USS West Virginia was in Pearl Harbor when Pearl Harbor was attacked by the Japanese. And, it's not destroyed, but it goes down. And sadly, there were still sailors on the ship. And the reason being that one of the, protocols you would do is when a ship was going down, and if you're a sailor on here, let me know. What is that called? Sailors, you would have to close the hatch so you wouldn't affect the rest of the ship, taking on water. So it wouldn't take on water so fast. And these men that got trapped on this particular part of the ship were in a compartment that had been pretty much like shut down. As well, not shut down, but nobody was allowed to get out because they had closed the hatch on them. And so the story goes, and this is from eyewitness accounts, that these men had to endure for 16 days. So from the time Pearl Harbor is attacked onward, these people, these poor men, these sailors, have to bang, and like they think that, we're fighting for this country. They're gonna come for us, and they didn't. It was so bad that they actually had to put, like, basically, I guess you would call them sentinels in a way, at Pearl Harbor where the ships had gone down, especially the West Virginia, because they were trying to deter people from going in and saving these men. And the reason that I heard that they didn't want to go in and save these men is because they would, I guess, I don't know, it doesn't make sense. What I've heard is that they didn't want to flood the ship, but also they didn't want, this second part I understand, because like these are people's lives. They didn't want to cause like any of the oil or anything else. They didn't want to make an environmental situation worse, is what they said, is what the logic is. But really, I just think they didn't care, And so the sad part is these men have to hear their fellow sailors, banging for their lives, literally, like trying to get out of this ship, trying to get help. And the even sadder part was they were in an area that had food and I believe fresh water, but they had no air, so they were running out of air. So these poor men die of suffocation, and it takes them 16 days to die. And the even sadder part is that this doesn't come out for years. Like, people just, because they literally just told these veterans that told these veterans' families rather, that they died. They went down with the ship. And so wives, mothers, siblings, they all believed this until the story came out that that's not at all what happened. And it's like, oh, let me fix that. And it's like, I'm pretty sure that just made, reopened the wound. Because, like, you've already lost this person, and it's been, 80-something years, and then this comes out, and now you gotta deal with that. But yeah, that's like real life terror. Like, and I mean, I feel more so for the families and the victims. I mean, it's just absolutely harrowing what these people went through. And now I just completely destroyed the mood. I'm so sorry. I got this cheerful look on, this cheerful eye look, and I just completely shut things down. So let's go with one last story that'll bring the well, I mean, that's creepy, but let's make it more creepier. So there's another ship that, this is a true story, that was considered to be a real ghost ship. And not in the sense of the Flying Dutchman, but more so in the sense of like these people went out and they didn't come back, and like, where are they? So I have the name of the ship was the Octavius. The Octavius was a British ship, and listen, they were coming back from China, and the captain, who by the way also had his family on board, the captain wanted to find a shortcut back to Europe, back to England. So what he did was he decided to go up through the Arctic Circle. And if you have seen The Terror, that show The Terror, you know what it's about up there. So apparently they get icebound and they disappear. Or at least, I mean, on the other side of the world, like, nobody knows where they've gone. Nobody knows where they, what happened, until some British sailors find, to be exact, they were whalermen. Whalermen go everywhere. Wherever there's a whale, they're there. So they get up there, and I can't remember if they became icebound themselves as well, but they did see this ship floating. No, they couldn't have been icebound, because if a ship is icebound for a number of years, it'll crush due to the pressure of the ice. But they end up seeing this boat, this ship floating, and I believe one of the one of the sailors saw the name, and he was like, hey, that's, so-and-so ship. So they get to the ship and they go aboard to see what's going on, and because they had called, yelled, ahoy, all of that, and nobody said anything. So, like I said, they go aboard, and what they find, I don't know, it's something about frozen corpses that just, like the end of The Shining, ew, that gets to me. And I understand why they were like, absolutely not, let's go. So they find that everybody on board this ship is dead, frozen to death, basically. The eeriest part to me, I don't know why it's so eerie, but the eeriest part is that they find the captain at his desk, and it looks as though he was writing. He was mid-writing, writing the process of it, and he had frozen. He had his wife and son on board as well. They found the wife frozen with the son, trying to keep him warm. And I believe they said the little boy had a blanket around him, and the mother was trying to, keep him warm. After seeing this, they threw up the deuces and went back on board their ship. And even scarier, that this ship was said to be floating for years, and that many sailors were running into this particular ship thinking, hey, oh, here's this ship, and it became like a legend. And I mean, people have said that that's kind of like apocryphal and not true, but I don't know, you gotta wonder. The ocean is a weird place. I tried this yesterday. I don't know if I'm gonna do that. I don't know, I'm gonna do a light lip, but the ocean is a weird place, and it can be eerie. Yeah, they said that they saw this ship for several years, just floating, just on the ocean, living its best life. But yeah, and also that reminds me of The Terror, like I was saying a few minutes ago. If you've ever seen that show, y'all, that show is so unnerving. It's got this weird, art house film imagery. Don't watch it. Don't do it. It's so eerie, that show. And this gives me that vibe. And actually, The Terror is based off of the failed, oh God, what was that expedition? Was it Franklin? I think it's Franklin Expedition, but the two ships that are in this show were real ships, the Erebus and the Terror, hence the name the Terror. But yeah, so this is a much better look than what I did before, because yeah, I looked like I was playing in my in my big sister's makeup. So if you like this video, please click the like button. I might be taking a break because I'm trying to get some new ideas for this video or for this channel. But if you do have any ideas, you can put them down in the comment section. So feel free to comment, because I'm new at this, trying my best. But I will see you all on the next episode of Painted Hank. Bye.